proceeds will be donated to the Cyril Ramaphosa Foundation, which will in turn distribute those funds to deserving charities to improve education and promote skills development in the communities across the country. The President is honored this year to partner with 11-year-old golfer Shalom Madlala from Malelane in the Mpumalanga province. Shalom is a provincial player in the South African Golf Development Board's program. The tee-off is set to take place at 9 o'clock in the morning, and media pool arrangements are in place for this occasion. If you need any further assistance, Shadi Baloyi, my colleague, will assist you. On Saturday, the 8th of February, the President will embark on a working visit to Dar es Salaam in the United Republic of Tanzania to participate at the Joint Southern African Development Community East African Community Heads of State and Government Summit on the security situation in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The heads of state and government of SADC and the East African Community agreed to meet urgently following their respective extraordinary summits held last month to deliberate on the way forward regarding the security situation in the DRC. The joint SADC-EAC summit will be preceded by senior officials and foreign ministers meetings taking place on the 6th and the 7th of February. The extraordinary SADC summit last month, or rather that was held last month, mandated the Southern Organ Troika on politics, defense and security cooperation to engage all state and non-state parties to the conflict on a ceasefire process to protect lives and facilitate smooth flow of humanitarian support to people and communities affected by the armed conflict. The summit also urged political and diplomatic leaders who are parties to the conflict to engage in coordinated efforts of dialogue, including supporting the Luanda process, MONUSCO, and others to restore peace and security in the Eastern DRC. On the 13th of February, the President will deliver his reply to the State of the Nation debate. The President looks forward to a very constructive, substantively enriching debate that will follow his SONA address. Between the 15th and the 16th of February, the President will lead the South African delegation to the 38th Ordinary Session of the Assembly of the Heads of State and Government of the African Union, which is taking place in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. He will be accompanied by several ministers and senior officials. The Assembly of Heads of State and Government of the AU will be held under the theme Justice for Africans and People of African Descent through Reparations. It will review and assess what has been achieved in Africa's efforts towards the attainment of long overdue justice and reparations after decades of colonialism and apartheid. The Assembly is taking place 2 months after South Africa assumed its presidency of the G20 this year. The summit will be a unique opportunity for President Ramaphosa to brief his counterparts on the key priorities of South Africa's G20 presidency and their alignment to Africa's Agenda 2063. The high-level meeting on the G20 will take place on the 15th of February on the margins of the summit. Importantly, the summit is also expected to discuss the status of peace and security on the continent, and this discussion on peace and security in Africa will take place against the backdrop of great concerns regarding the state of peace and security, including the ongoing conflict in the Eastern DRC. The discussions will also cover the peace and security situation in Sudan and South Sudan, and those two countries will feature prominently during the summit. The President, as you all know, in his capacity as the chairperson of the Ad Hoc Committee on South Sudan, also known as the C5, will convene an extended meeting on South Sudan specifically to include key countries in the eastern region such as Kenya, Ethiopia, and Uganda. The current president of South Sudan His Excellency President Salva Kiir will also be in attendance. In line with the G20 theme, on the 28th of February, President Ramaphosa will address, or rather host, the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting at the Nasrec Expo Center in Gauteng. Among other issues for discussion will be the current geopolitical dynamics, as well as the President's reflection on South Africa's G20 presidency, high-level deliverables, and the review of the G20 at 20, which is a review of the G20 after 20 years since its inception. South Africa's G20 presidency commenced on the 1st of December 2024 under the theme of solidarity, equality, and sustainability. And lastly, on the program, and this is on the 27th of February now, the President will deliver a keynote address at the Basic Education Lekgotla. The Department of Basic Education will host the Basic Education Sector Lekgotla at the Birchwood Hotel and OR Tambo Conference Center in Johannesburg. The theme of the 2025 Lekgotla is Strengthening Foundations for Learning for a Resilient Future Fit Education System. So that is a quick run-through of the program. We will send it out so as you have it on record, and to also assist your planning. Should there be any other changes to the President's public engagement program, we will advise, as we often do, through advisories. I'm now happy to take any questions that you might have. How are you, Paul? You are? That's okay. How are you, John? Good. Paul, you want to kick off? Sure. Take another question. Yes, please. Yeah, I can hear you. Take the last one. Spokesperson. I'm glad you do. Commander, let me start with the first one. I think just purely out of respect of... Oh, sorry. Oh. Okay, sure. Can I start with you? Just purely out of respect for my colleagues at the Department of Defense, I'll rather let them lead on this one. They are more intimate with the details, so I'll refer you to them. Yeah. I've been trying to call them since the moment they are. I'm sure Spiwa is either watching or will be in touch with you. He's a very reliable communicator. Yeah. I'll follow up for you and I'll assist you, as well as let me go back to Paul. Paul, when was the first time South Africa had presence of troops in the DRC? If my counting is correct, it's been 20 years now. It began through our contribution to the UN peacekeeping force in the DRC, and that was during the later years of the Mandela administration, if you'll recall. That's how far back? 23 years, correct. And so to reduce such a long commitment to the attainment of peace in the DRC, in our continent, to the protection of mining interest, is completely devoid of any truth, and it lacks the knowledge and the appreciation of South Africa's role in ensuring peacekeeping or ensuring the stability of our continent. We've been involved in over 20 peacekeeping initiatives on the continent. The latest being Mozambique, where last year we began a phase withdrawal. We were part of a SADC peacekeeping force there. There were never any accusations of our involvement there being directed at the protection of any economic interest. We were there as part of a SADC mandated peacekeeping force to protect lives and to ensure stability in our neighboring country. And so we will reject those assertions because they also are devoid of any facts, but more disappointingly, they just lack the appreciation of South Africa's long involvement in ensuring that we enjoy a greater deal of stability and peace on our continent in pursuit of economic development, amongst other things. And so that we will reject, and anybody who says otherwise will then have to present proof thereof. On the issue of engagements between, this is Babalo, between Elon and the president as well as President Trump. Look, Babalo, the US is our second largest trading partner. We have a long-standing strategic, political, trade, as well as cultural relationship. And it's a relationship that we respect. It's a relationship that has always been mutually beneficial, and it will continue being mutually beneficial. Therefore, where there are bumps, as we have recently experienced, it will always be in our interest to engage with various role players within the leadership of the country, but also broadly in society in the US. Year before last, the president held a roundtable with American captains of industry. A large number of them represented over 600 US companies that operate in South Africa. And the engagements touched on a number of issues that impact business in South Africa, but also opportunities that are ripe for investments in our country. And therefore, considering all of those elements, it is important that we work on maintaining that relationship, but also we work on growing and expanding that relationship. And so we will get over the current bumps, we will clarify the issues that need to be clarified, and we will respond expeditiously to disinformation and mischaracterization of our laws, as well as of the general state of the country. And in so doing, we will engage all the relevant stakeholders, and we will communicate our position publicly as we've done. So there will be more engagements, not only with the Trump administration and influential figures such as Elon Musk currently in the US, but with other role players as well. in the US, and those engagements will take place at multiple levels. Ministerial level, we have an ambassador now in Washington, Ambassador Rasul, who's hit the ground running. He will be spearheading some of our engagements with various levels of the Trump administration. Minister Lamola will be reaching out to his counterpart in that regard. For the G20 foreign ministers meeting, we are hoping that Secretary Rubio will attend. If he does not attend, we know that there will be a delegation of senior officials representing the State Department and the Trump administration, which we will have an opportunity to engage with. And so on the basis of that, those engagements will be ongoing. Let me tie this response then to Lulama's follow-up on the possibility of a visit to the US. Generally, the president is always committed to attending the United Nations General Assembly. And sometimes on the margins of UNGA, engagements are then held with a number of countries. I think it was back in 2022, we started in Washington. The president held a meeting with former President Biden at the time. And so I can't really commit on that travel, but it's generally accepted commitment that the president will attend UNGA, and when he does, then he engages in various bilateral meetings. We're still hoping, Lulama, that President Trump will visit South Africa ahead of the G20 summit when we get that final round of heads of states. And it remains President Ramaphosa's intention to welcome him on a state visit. We're hoping that there'll be time even for a round of golf. We've been trying to urge the president to just steal a bit more time and get his swing back in order and back in the groove, so that when he takes President Trump out for a round of golf, he's able to put up a decent game. And so that remains an intention, that the president welcomes President Trump on a state visit, and that will afford then the two of them an opportunity to engage over a whole range of issues of mutual interest, but also issues that may be regarded as of bilateral concern, either in South Africa or elsewhere in the world. Have I left a question? Pamanda, I started with you. I think, okay, you asked about a conversation between President Trump and President Ramaphosa. We don't have any timelines yet in terms of when that conversation will take place. Conversations are already taking place at various levels of officialdom, if you like, between the two countries, and we need to allow those conversations to kind of run their course. The conversations taking place around issues related to PEPFAR, and the conversations that are taking place around, refuting some of this mischaracterization of our country and the application of our laws. Ultimately, there will be a conversation between the two heads of state, but I can't give the timeline right now. Okay, that was the first round. Yes, sir.
Morning, sir. My name is Arthur from Hartford. How is the mood in the office of the president ahead of him delivering the State of the Nation address tomorrow? Because you've also mentioned things that are currently happening now, what's happening in the Eastern DRC, GNU matter. How is the mood? Is he ready?
He's very ready for tomorrow. Typically, Arthur, in our office, there's never a time when we are dealing with one issue. The sort of typical day or week or month in our office involves dealing with multiple issues at the same time. As we speak, I'm supposed to be huddling with the team that's working through tomorrow's address, and drafts are bouncing back and forth between ourselves and the president, and feedback is being solicited amongst ourselves and other colleagues. And so we're excited. We are not in any way distracted by all these other issues. We accept these issues to be par for course in the nature of the President's work, also in the nature of the issues that we have to deal with and resolve. We are not in crisis mode. We are dealing with these issues as we have to, and there's a great deal of excitement over tomorrow's address, being the first one under the 7th administration, under the auspices of the Government of National Unity. Tomorrow's address will have received inputs from ministers that come from other parties who are responsible for their respective portfolios. And so tomorrow's address will be very much reflective of the Government of National Unity, and that we're finding a great deal of excitement out of. So the mood is positive, and we're looking forward to tomorrow. These other issues, we're dealing with them as we have to deal with them, but we're not in crisis mode. We don't feel like we have a massive crisis on our hands, but it's issues that we have to manage and issues that we have to have some control over as we progress. John?
And then John Ellingall with the New York Times. Two more questions following up on the U.S. Issue. One, why did after Trump made his comments, why did President Ramaphosa speak to Elon Musk? And then second, what has the president's discussions been with his GNU partners, particularly the DA, regarding messaging around the expropriation bill, given that they hold a very different stance on that? And does the president see the DA being able to play a role in sort of these talks with the U.S., given that they may have that U.S. leaders may have a different view of the DA, they may have different relationships than the ANC in the U.S.
Right. John, we there's a partnership that constitutes the Government of National Unity. In that partnership, the DA is part of that partnership. The DA is represented at ministerial level in various very key and critical portfolios, chief amongst them being the Department of Agriculture or the Agriculture portfolio, which is led by Minister Steenhuisen, who is also the leader of the DA. Minister Steenhuisen has done a few sort of international visits interacting with his counterparts in the interest of South Africa and in the interest of advancing our trade agenda, particularly in the agricultural sector, where we can increase our exports to various countries. In that regard, Minister Steenhuisen, along his other colleagues, will play a critical role in engaging not only the U.S. but our other key trade partners. Minister McPherson has already secured funding arrangements for some of our infrastructure development ambitions. One of them out of China, and so he will continue in that regard, engaging countries such as the U.S. as well as other key trading partners. The Expropriation Act, for example, that you will say is in dispute with the U.S. purely out of their own misreading and misunderstanding of the act and its intention, will have its regulations formulated under the leadership of Minister McPherson. In that way, Minister McPherson will play a key role in not only leading that process but communicating the manner in which that process will be conducted. As you know, statutorily, there's an element of public participation in the formulation of those regulations, which is another thing that we have to explain to our U.S. counterparts, that in our legal framework, we do not have any provisions that allow government to act arbitrarily. We don't even have executive orders. The president can't issue executive orders. What the president can and cannot do is clearly laid out in the Constitution, and where it's not, that is expressed quite clearly in relevant legislation. And so, and so yes, to the extent that you have ministers from the DA as a partner to the government of national unity, of course, they are expected to engage with external role players in the interest of the country, and they will do so. And in this regard, you've already seen the communication that they issued, which was very much in line with that of the president. It was the same line of march in responding to the disinformation coming out of the US, but also in presenting the more appropriate sort of position and of that act. We've not been shy, and no one is shy about the fact that even within the GNU, there are issues to be clarified about the act. You could say there have been disagreements. We've not found those disagreements being unhealthy. We've found those disagreements being robust in the typical nature in which as South Africans we engage. And so indeed, the expectation would be well placed for all ministers that interface with external parties and our trading partners to put their best foot forward in articulating the country's position on key issues and in presenting our country's aspirations from a trade agenda point of view. Why did the president speak to Elon Musk? Following President Trump's announcement, we issued a statement which was posted on X out of the president's handle as well as the presidency handle. There was a response to that statement by Elon, and generally we were obviously perturbed by the substance of the announcement. Because there were clearly inaccuracies with respect to the reflection of the country and what was happening in the country. The X platform is a hugely influential platform. It's owned by Elon Musk. The president has held engagements prior to this announcement with Elon Musk with the intention to see him invest more in South Africa. His particular interest was around Starlink, as well as the sort of regulatory environment that regulates that sector. So we've had open engagements with Elon Musk. So in light of this recent development, it was sensible and logical and quite important that the president engages with him so that we reinforce his own understanding of what is happening in South Africa, and we flag our concern with respect to the disinformation that we saw in the announcement by President Trump, but also in his own response to our statement. The president was quite emphatic in saying South Africa does not have racist ownership laws. All our laws take their cue from our constitution, and where they do not meet constitutional muster, we have an independent judiciary that deals with those issues without any political interference whatsoever. And these are South Africa's strengths that we're going to be repeating over and over and over again. Not only to the Trump administration, but to others who may begin to have some form of doubt about the state of this country, that we have a highly regarded, highly respected independent judiciary, that we have highly sophisticated legal framework which is based on a well-respected constitution around the world. And so we are a country that respects the rule of law, and there are just certain things that we don't do, and there are things that will never happen in South Africa because of being a country that is guided by a constitution. And so it was important that they have that conversation, and that that understanding is emphasized at least to benefit Elon, but also considering his influence within the Trump circle, for the president to deliver that message. Okay, let me start with Paul. Okay, let me give that gentleman a chance because he hasn't asked the question. Then I'll come to Paul. Then I'll make my way back.
داود علي العربي TV. This is not the first time that Mr. Trump condemned South Africa about its foreign policy, especially in its stance politically in the Ukrainian-Russian war, in Palestine, in BRICS. Did you see that the aggressive reaction about the law from Trump is there is a next steps against South Africa, especially there is some speech about the Aqua Treaty. They can stop it or something.
Mr. Dali, is that correct?
Dawood.
Dawood, yeah. I haven't heard President Trump saying anything specific to South Africa relating to Ukraine and Russia, or the Palestinian conflict for that matter. We've had a number of people within the American leadership establishment voicing their opinions around South Africa's foreign policy positions, particularly with those two issues. What we did before and what the president sought to do was to send a high-level team of ministers to Washington. This was during the later years of the Biden administration, to engage with their American counterparts and clarify South Africa's position. I think by now it's a well-known position. It may not have, or it may not enjoy universal agreement in the United States or elsewhere, but it's a well-known position, and it's one that will always continue to clarify and communicate. So we can't speculate around the reasons that led to the recent announcement by President Trump. All we know is that that announcement is informed by things that are not true about our country, by things that are not true about the manner in which we apply legislation. That's what we know. As to what informed that announcement, we know of fringe right-wing groups in South Africa that have been campaigning against our country, that have misrepresenting the country, that we know of. But as to what discussions took place in the White House leading up to that announcement, we cannot speculate and draw parallels with other issues. You mentioned AGOA. AGOA is a trade arrangement, not only with South Africa but with the whole continent. In President Trump's announcement, there was no mention of AGOA. There was mention of aid, and so I wouldn't conflate the two. I also wouldn't start speculating around what may or may not happen around AGOA. All I know is that, or all we know as a government, is that AGOA is a mutually beneficial trade relationship. It's not a one-way trade relationship. It's a two-way trade relationship. It benefits the African continent just as much as it benefits the United States. And so AGOA matters are very separate from this issue, and we will deal with them when it's time to engage over them. Paul?
Thank you, Vincent. The Minister of Monitoring and Planning in the Presidency has been quoted as saying the past on the National Health Insurance Act between the DA and the ANC and government has been informally agreed to, so they've come to some, especially on the parts about medical aids and non-destruction. Can you confirm this? Please, have you know any details about this?
Paul, I saw that report this morning. I'm yet to have an opportunity to catch up with the minister. All I can say, you'll recall that there was a commitment from the president to consult a number of stakeholders over their concerns with respect to certain elements of the NHI Act. Those engagements have been ongoing, and one will not be entirely surprised if an agreement is reached in that regard. But I'm yet to be fully briefed on the details that were reflected on the article that you reference, except to say the principle has always been there, championed by the president, that we iron out whatever disagreements that we have over NHI within the GNU, as well as between government and business and other stakeholders that are affected or have an interest on the matter. Okay, then I make my way back to Baba Alwa and then Spamandla. Baba.
Thanks. Just a follow-up on the disinformation. And maybe in President Trump's defense, he was fed a lot of this disinformation by South African players, mentioned these big organizations. Is engaging them, out of the question, or is led perhaps by the president, our local AfriForums, our solidarities, or has that ship, on expropriation specifically, or has that ship not sailed?
No, Baba, look. So Minister McPherson is going to lead a process of formulating regulations that will guide the implementation of the Expropriation Act. In that process, there is a window of opportunity for public participation. I will think that the likes of AfriForum and others will participate in that process, and they will be welcome to participate in that process. I haven't discussed this with the president, to be honest, but I will have my doubts about the efficacy of him investing time in engaging with AfriForum, because there is nothing that they do not know about our constitution. They have litigated against government referencing the constitution. What AfriForum has adopted as a feature is sowing racial divisions and sowing fear amongst the group of their supporters. And we will assert that they've done so successfully amongst a very small group of people, really small group of people. They have been loud enough to then find an ear within certain quarters in the US leadership establishment. But for the president to invest time engaging them over something that they know, over their deliberate behavior to misrepresent our country and misrepresent the intent and the spirit of our laws, I'm not quite sure that would be the prudent use of the president's time. The president always believes that he will always be available to talk to everybody, even people that he disagrees with. And he always references a lesson that he was taught by former President Mandela, that you talk to everybody, including even your sworn enemies. So he may very well decide to grant them an audience, but if I were to just put my head on the block, I would say it will not be a prudent use of his time, because what AfriForum has been doing has been deliberate, and they've been quite clear in their advocacy against any form of transformation in our country. They've been quite clear and blatant to stand against any form of unity and inclusivity. And so after engaging the president, will they be convinced differently? I don't know, But what we find disturbing is that they know our constitution, they've used it, they've referenced it in litigating against the government and in pursuing their interest. And the kind of misinformation that they've led about our country has been deliberate and has been part and parcel of their anti-transformation agenda. Was there, Babalo, that was the question. I'll go to Spamandla and I'll come back to you, Arthur.
What do you make of the DA federal leader's address later today? He says he will be addressing and also highlighting the DA's achievements in the national executive. In the past, they used to do it as the official opposition, but
Yes.
now they are part of this government of national unity. Shouldn't there be one line of march?
Is this Minister Stenhuisen?
Yes, it is him.
Okay. All right, and this is scheduled for this afternoon,
In an hour from now.
in an hour from
In
now.
fact, 15 minutes from now.
Okay, look, Spokesperson, I guess we just have to be realistic about the fact that even though we are in the GNU and we're partners in the GNU, there will always be an element of competition amongst political parties, right? We have local government elections coming up next year. The same parties that are working together quite well, actually, if I may add, within the GNU will be competing for votes in the local government sphere. And so I don't think you can take away that element of competition, number one. Number two, I guess they see it as in their interest to showcase to their constituency what they've been able to contribute to the GNU. We can argue the meaning of contribution versus the meaning of achievement, but if they feel strongly about the contributions that they've made and they want to communicate those contributions, well, I guess it's their prerogative to do so. I don't think necessarily there's a contradiction to what you reference to as a single line of march, because only the president can issue a single line of march, and that will happen tomorrow. And so they'll have their say today. That's fine. We're not going to lose sleep over that. But I guess we just have to accept that there will always be that element of competition. No party has actually said, by being part of the GNU, they are sitting away their own brand, their identity, and the individual beliefs and so on. But they've all committed in the interest of the country to work together in leading the government. And so we will focus on that. We will focus on that positive. I must actually, I'll take time to watch it. Honestly, I didn't know about it. It's interesting. You're right. They used to do it after the State of the Nation address as an official opposition. They no longer are an official opposition, and so maybe it's part of the process of trying to find an identity that kind of works. But it's not something that we will take a great deal of offense out of. The country is expecting the president to deliver the line of march, and that line of march, by the way, will be followed by all ministers, including Minister Stenhuisen and ministers from other parties. So it's not something that we will worry about. Why are you laughing? I must say.
But there will be chaos if all parties who are members or part of the GNU were to do that. Imagine 10 of them doing that.
Well, look, not really, Spamanda. We have a very vibrant democracy. We have a very vibrant democracy. Once you start trying to micromanage party activities, you're going to run into problems, right? I don't know what informed this address. I don't know whether it was Minister Stenhuisen's own initiative or it is a party initiative. Remember, the DA still retains its identity and character as a party, right? And there's nothing fundamentally wrong with that. So, you know, a lot of what we're experiencing with the GNU could have not been scripted in a way, right? We are learning as we progressing, right? What is important is what brings us together and what is that spirit that brings us together in the interest of the country. And we will keep our focus on that. We're not going to start backing orders to how parties must behave in their own spaces as parties. Certainly the president has an expectation of his ministers. They serve at his pleasure. The president has an expectation of how his ministers conduct themselves in the course of doing their work. And that is something he's constitutionally empowered to do. and that expectation will never change. But what parties then decide to do with their representatives that are part of the GNU at ministerial level is entirely up to those parties. One will expect, though, that the DA, or rather, let me put it this way: one will expect that there will be enough maturity in ensuring that there is no message that is going to contradict that of the president tomorrow. That will be a fair expectation. That at the very least, there is that courtesy, not only to the president, but to the people of this country, that they hear an aligned message coming out of all GNU partners. How they then do that, it's entirely up to them.
Good morning, Natasha Naidu from Newsroom Africa. Vincent, I have two questions. The first is in relation to threats by President Trump with regard to imposing 100% tariffs on the BRICS nations should they continue to undermine the dollar. Now, you mentioned that there's been high-level engagements with the Trump administration and beyond. But is this of a particular concern now? And is President Ramaphosa having discussions with his BRICS counterparts? And secondly, is Tim Swallow expected to return to SONA in 2025? Thank you.
When you look at that issue, again, it's just, classic misunderstanding, because there was never a time when any BRICS nation, or a time where the BRICS grouping of countries took or adopted a resolution that said we will undermine the dollar. There was never a time. There is no such resolution. What BRICS countries proposed was they can amongst themselves conduct their trade in their respective countries. The reason being that it will be far more cost effective to do so when you consider the volatility of the respective local currencies against the dollar, right? And so if you look at the South African rand and its volatile nature against the dollar, what sparks, sort of movements of the currency, it will be cost effective for us to buy goods from China in our own currency. Just as the same for any other country. And so this is more of, call it, an inward looking sort of trade benefit, if you like, right? Purely as a way of managing and balancing your cost, and benefiting your economy. It's got nothing to do whatsoever with undermining a particular country's currency. And so, again, we've had a flurry of announcements and executive orders in a very short space of time. What has been absent are engagements over these issues to build a proper understanding of what informs a stance such as the BRICS grouping deciding that they will trade amongst themselves in their respective local currencies. Once there are engagements, particularly at bilateral levels, where each country that has some form of trade partnership and bilateral relationship with the US, we think these issues over time will be ironed out. They obviously do make for headlines that cause panic and that cause a lot of concern, but we are placing our hope that ultimately there will be engagements over these issues and a better understanding will be created over them. And so the president has not engaged his BRICS counterparts specifically on this issue, because the translation is that you just need to allow time for the Trump administration to settle in. Once it settles in, then it will have sufficient time to process these issues properly. But we are we are dealing with an unusual case of misinformation and the spread of misinformation, and so we just have to be vigilant in being proactive with respect to communicating our position on these issues. No, I think we covered you. Yeah,
Yes,
sure.
So I just want to get a response from the President. So there have been calls from political parties that Parliament should not allow the military to parade tomorrow. What do you make of that?
I think the presiding officers will cover this issue today. There is a protocol template of what happens on the day you open Parliament and the President delivers the State of the Nation address, and I will imagine some of these ceremonial elements are part of that protocol template. And so the President is being hosted by Parliament in a way, and I guess it will be appropriate for Parliament to be the one that pronounces on the matter. The participation of the South African National Defence in the ceremonial activities preceding the SONA address is not the one that is sanctioned by the President, as you would in the deployment, for example, of the military. So it's something that I guess the presiding officers will be best placed in dealing with. One sort of understands where that sentiment may be coming from with respect to recent events in the Eastern DRC, but at the same time, I think there's a balance that we can strike between maintaining our ceremonial protocols whilst demonstrating the necessary level of sensitivity to what has happened recently. Yes, sir.
News 24. Is there any chance of a direct conversation between President Ramaphosa and the Rwandan president? Is that, for instance, will that happen at the heads of state at the SADC East African or at the African Union?
Yeah, good question. At this stage, we've not received any bilateral request. However, should there be such a request, the President will do his best to accommodate it as best as possible. Jan, the President has repeatedly said that conflict will be resolved through negotiations, and that's going to take the warring parties talking amongst themselves, and that's going to take leaders within the region engaging with each other over the resolution of that conflict, and that includes conversations between President Kagame and President Ramaphosa. We've got questions online. I see we're joined by Tando and Tembile. Welcome, colleagues. Good to see you. Shadi?
There are questions from Raymond Netback 24, and he's asking, there has been some diplomatic tensions between South Africa and the US. Recently, Senator Ted Cruz said that South Africa is going out of its way to eliminate the US and its allies, questioning the South African government decision to expel Taiwan from Pretoria. What steps is the South African government willing to take to rebuild trust with the US? And the second one is, what is South Africa's government comment regarding President Trump's plan for Gaza? And the last one is on the Elon Musk.
Is this all, Raymond?
Yes.
Okay.
Did the president call Elon directly, or was the call facilitated by Elon's father?
Okay, let me start with that one. Last year, we made it a point that because of what the president was trying to do with respect to attracting investments from Elon's business portfolio, we we had them exchange their numbers, and so Elon has the president's numbers and vice versa, and so how the call was facilitated is neither here nor there, because both of them can reach out to each other whenever they feel it's necessary to do so, and it's not a rare thing only with Elon. The president is on speed dial with a number of large sort of investors and business people from around the world, including here in South Africa. So there won't be anything unusual there. Raymond, we saw that statement or that post from Senator Ted Cruz. It's always important to just remind each other of the facts on these issues. And again, I stress the importance of engagements that we're already having with various levels of leadership in the US, and that we'll continue to have. The decision on Taiwan was not taken yesterday. The decision on Taiwan was taken, in fact, in the very first democratic administration, which was led by President Mandela. I stand to be corrected. There are no more than 12 countries around the world that recognize Taiwan. And I think even the United States itself does not recognize Taiwan. And so the expulsion out of Pretoria was a long overdue exercise in line with a policy that was taken in the mid-90s during the first administration of President Mandela. And this is something, again, that we think we'll be able to communicate to our US counterparts so that they understand it better. I don't think there's an issue of trust as such, Raymond. I think there's just an issue of sort of pervasive misunderstanding of each other's positions at the moment. You have a new administration coming in, you have a new cohort of senators that have come in. We believe that once we have the opportunity to engage over these issues, there will be a better understanding of South Africa's position. In any case, there's nothing unhealthy with us holding different viewpoints, and that does not necessarily mean the collapse of a relationship. It means that as independent and sovereign countries, it is natural that on certain issues we will hold different positions and we will hold different viewpoints. And a partnership with any country does not mean an agreement over all issues. And that's been the case with the United States. Even during previous administrations, we held a different perspective on a number of issues, dating back during the military campaign against Iraq, for example. We held a different viewpoint then. We disagreed with that military action. So we shouldn't translate disagreements or different perspectives as contributors to an absence of trust. We should rather look at opportunities to then enhance each other's understanding of those issues. Trump's plan for Gaza. Let me rather reiterate our position on Gaza and the whole Palestinian question. We still believe and we still hold firmly that the people of Palestine, like all other nations, deserve to live in peace, freedom, free from occupation by any power, and they deserve to determine their own future. And self-determination remains an inherent right that is enjoyed by any other nation around the world. So we still believe in those principles. And I guess in a way you will say that plan is not in line with those principles. And it's one of the issues that we will communicate across comfortably so. And it will be an issue that will be agreed as an issue of differing perspectives But that remains our belief that the people of Palestine deserve to self-determine their own future, their own affairs, in a country that is free from occupation, that is free from any form of oppression. Okay, I think I've covered Raymond there. Tando, you good? I think, yeah, we're good, colleagues. I'll let you go so you can set up for the presiding officer's press conference. Thank you so much.
Say,